Good morning to you. I am Dan Kopp from Leading Like a Buffalo and the Enhanced Leadership Project. And joining me as always is Ty Firsching. Good morning, Ty.
Good morning, Dan. Hope everything's okay in Wisconsin. It's lovely here doing the change of weather seasons in Uganda. Again, I am in Uganda, so if there's any technical difficulties, Dan will take up the slack and run with it. Other than that, I'm excited to be here. It's going to be a great topic. This is one of my favorites, so I'm excited to introduce it to you.
Well, I'm excited as well. Before we get into today's topic, I want to remind our viewers that if you are watching live and you have a question or comment, feel free to drop it in the comment box and we'll do our best to address it on air. And if you have a question that we don't get to, we can always address it in the following episode. If you'd like to work with Ty and or me, feel free to reach out to us directly on LinkedIn. And you can also find our emails scrolling on the bottom of the screen, dan@leadingbuffalo.com and ty@tradesecrets.com. And we would definitely welcome the opportunity to work with you. If you'd like to check out our other content, feel free to jump over on YouTube and go to the Enhanced Leadership Project, and you can check out our previous episodes. So today's topic, the Leadership Excellence Barometer. Now, typically when we have topics, we share a lot of the presentation. Sometimes Ty will start out because it's something through his lens and I've got knowledge and a little ownership of it. And sometimes it's through my lens and he's got a little knowledge and ownership of it. This one, I'm going in cold. So everything he's going to talk about today is new to me as well. I'm excited about it. So I may have questions that maybe you're thinking, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. And hopefully we're all better off for this experience. So Ty, take it away, the Leadership Excellence Barometer.
Hey, thanks for the nice intro, Dan. Appreciate it. So the Excellence Barometer is something that came to fruition through the Active Personal Engagement Program, which is my independent program. And Dan has the Buffalo tenets, which I like to call them. But what we're talking about is his book is like the 9 tenets, the power of me, right?
There you go. The power of me leadership.
Yeah, power of me leadership, 9 tenets to guide yourself by, or something like that. And these are both 2 independent programs that we've merged together. So Dan knows, he has a little bit of foreknowledge of my program, quite a bit actually, but he doesn't know this part because when you work with a program that's as dynamic as either of ours are, things tend to change or you can add things, and sometimes it happens by accident. And this one happened over a period of 10 years, but it wasn't until like the last year and a half when I was running this program with some people who looked at things a little bit different and started questioning why things were happening. And let me stop there. My 3 tenets that we deal with in active personal engagement is active discernment, personal state, and engaged values. And I typically work backwards when I introduce them. I introduce engaged values, which basically are the values that you participate in every day. They're supported by your daily actions. Now, someone's like, well, why would you call them engaged values and not core values? I'll get to that in a second, because that's what today's all about. The next one I talk about is personal state. And we come from a point of the ancient Greek word Irene, which is E-I-R-E-N-E, looks like Irene or Irene. And the ancient Greeks had such a full concept of their language that they talked in concepts. One word meant anything. And Irene means peace, but it means external peace. It means community peace. It means peace brought on externally by yourself and peace brought on externally by others. And it could be global peace, and it means inner peace. So it has all those. So we're not stuck with this paradigm of we're just talking about your inner peace. If you're good, you can do yoga, you can center yourself. It expands beyond that, which is really what we want to live by. We don't just want our inner peace. We want everything around us to be, hey, this is what our goal that we're aiming for. So I'll talk about active discernment later, but just remember active discernment is really the act of implementing discernment in your processing pathways, the way you think, the way you problem solve. There has to be a modicum of discernment in everyone. If there isn't, you run into different scenarios that just aren't good. Back to engaged values. I'm a mathematician by trade, and I really lacked the introspect when I first started going to conferences of, okay, what are your core values? And I was like, oh, my core values. That's good. And dollars to donuts, if you ask anyone what their core values are, they're not going to be able to just rattle them off because they have to actually think about them. They may know it internally. They're kind of esoteric or existential, I guess would be the word. And engaged values were a way for me to, well, let's take a look at what somebody does during the day. And let's translate what they're doing and why it's important. And let's see if that translates to a value that they are living, that they're currently living. So it was tangible. So I did it with the old proof by induction. I did it for one. And then I started doing it with other people and I did it for other. And it actually worked. And I was like, I knew it would work. I'm a mathematician. Of course it's going to work. And I'm jesting there, but you get the idea. I didn't have to go through that realm of introspection, which is really difficult for some people. Some people like to look at themselves on the inside to see what they're doing, to see what they value. They enjoy it, to see their personal state as well. Some people aren't geared that way. And so mine was a way to, everybody can do it this way. And it didn't eliminate half the audience. So when we're talking about engaged values, we talk about personal state, and there's an overlap there. And this is where Dan's tenet is gut leadership. Is that the name of the tenet, the formal name, Dan?
Trust your gut. Yep.
Trust your gut.
Yep.
And Dan and I have talked about this. You know, sometimes when you lay awake at night because of a decision you made or because of something that happened, generally, it's because something isn't aligned right with your values, or you compromise your values and you're just sitting, playing it over and over in your head and you can't sleep. And the whole idea of our program, both Dan's is to give you an avenue where, you know, even if you are doing that, if you made the best possible decision, giving all the relevant information at that particular time, you have to give yourself a break. This is where, when I was working with the active personal engagement program with a client and student, I guess you would say, she had listed her engaged values, what she did on a daily basis and what she valued. And we came up with these values, and she had excellence. She had tidiness. She had time management as a value, but we wrapped it into responsibility. And she had these nice values, which were all based on actions that she did every day. And they may sound like core values, but not all the time are your engaged values a specific core value, because core values are broader. They may fall underneath. But what I want to say is the term excellence has always given me a problem. It always has triggered something in my gut as a core value. And quite frankly, I think it sucks as a core value. And I'll tell you why. This person, her name's Cherry, we can leave it at that. She was reconciling, she was staying awake at night because she's like, I have all my values written. I did them, but I was still not satisfied because I could have done them better. And she's really opening up in this discussion and in front of other people. She goes, this is what's going on. And I'm sitting there, I go, so what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, Cherry, is that your standard is so high, you couldn't meet it even if you wanted to. And yet it was bothering you and you were lying awake at night. So it was disturbing your personal state. And she's like, yes. And I go, well, that's a case of where you have such a high standard of excellence that you're never going to meet it. And you have to realize that you have to give yourself a break. You have to check yourself, because if you don't, you're always going to be just missing your bar that you set. Now, I also went on to say there's nothing wrong with having high standards, but there is when you can never obtain it. And you see signs when people, or signs or whatever, the goals and core values of companies, and excellence generally is on there somewhere. But you don't wake up in the morning and go, I'm excellence. You can say, I'm responsible, I have responsibility, but you really can't say, I have excellence. I mean, unless you're Bill and Ted, but it's going way back there. Anyway, so we were defining what's doing this. And I thought about it, and there's a lot of people who have had that excellence so high they can't attain it. And Dan, before I go on with some examples, are you seeing where these are overlapping and what we're using as a checks and balances? It's kind of
absolutely. And you sort of touched on this. Core values, people struggle with that. I agree. I coach a lot of people, and when we challenge people to look within, most people struggle with that. It's very, because we're afraid of what's there. We're afraid of what we might find, or we know what's there and we don't want to deal with it. So people are truly afraid of self-examination. But when we talk core values versus engaged values, it's very easy to fall into the very human trap of core values. These are all the positive things that I exude or aspire to. And that's what, when we work with people, we help them realize, do you aspire to this, or are you actually doing it? Because not all engaged values are positive. Right. Engaged values can be negative or positive. But when we say core values, people assume the positive. Most people don't want to go to work in the day being an idiot, like being the jerk that everybody hates. But their behavior makes people feel that. But that person's core value isn't being a jerk. His engaged value is, because that's what he exudes all the time, and people sense that. But that's not he wouldn't define his core value. My core value is I'm a jerk and I'm good at it. No, that's your engaged value. We've now identified something upon which you can work. Minimize that while it's accentuating the positive stuff that are also your engaged values. So yes, people have struggle looking within, and when we talk core, people jump to positivity and perhaps ignore the negative stuff as well. So keep that in mind as time progresses.
Yeah, thanks for that. And he's right. People, if you write down habits and you're scrolling 6 hours a day, that's not really a positive habit, but it is an engaged value. It means you value scrolling, but what are you giving up as you're scrolling? And so then you have to make a different engaged value for it and try and curb it, like responsible community awareness for scrolling. So you're not, because generally that's what it is. People have a tie to what's going on around them. They just want to know. That's a whole different thing in engaged values. And we'll come back to that in one of these later episodes. But the idea, what Cherry had come across, was she was having a hard time reconciling. She did it and she still wasn't satisfied, and it was keeping her up. And what I told her is, use it. Excellence is not a compass. It's not a value. It's not a core value. It's a barometer. It lets you know that you've reached a value and you can be satisfied with that. And thus your personal state is intact. And there's examples. And again, I'm a math guy. I had a professor once, he goes, well, man, I'm glad I wasn't as smart as this math professor or this mathematician. And we're like, why? He goes, because when you do something this young, at the age of 20, most mathematicians, they go insane because they can never top it. And that was the idea of the excellence barometer, because they hit their pinnacle so young and they're always striving to get it again. And they literally, their mind doesn't let up. And they literally falter by the side or go insane or end up with developing some type of psychological problems. And I was like, wow. And one that's really famous is Alan Turing. He's the mathematician that decoded the Enigma code during World War II. And he did that in his early 20s. Always trying to top it. Never could. Never really was satisfied. Never was happy again. And it's documented well. But the one I like to think, if you have excellence as a core value, this is what happens. It's like putting a carrot on a stick in front of a donkey. And we all know this analogy. The donkey will keep going. You have no intention of giving the donkey the carrot. I mean, in some countries that's considered animal cruelty and you get in trouble for it. But the donkey gets, I mean, is just going and he's never going to get there. Never going to get there. Is he progressing? He's progressing, but he's probably damaging himself along the way because he's never going to reach it. If you asked Michael Jordan when he was in his prime, if he was going to do better tomorrow, he goes, absolutely. His level of excellence was so far above anybody else. And that's good for drive. But it also, there came a point when he realized, I'm done. And he just couldn't play. He couldn't match it. And when he realized that, if you talk to him, he says that was the best decision in his life because he realized he couldn't do it anymore, whether it's his body getting old or what. He realized his limit was there. He could have exceeded it. He did the best. No one's caught up to him as far as I'm concerned. And that was excellent. But he wasn't happy. He always wanted to do better and better. So the idea behind setting your bar so high that it affects you because you know you can't reach it, what you have to do, and this is where we have these two things overlapping, personal state and engaged values, and that's where this excellence barometer lives. What we want to do is bring this down into the full idea of the philosophy of active personal engagement. And how do we do that? We use discernment. You realize that value is so high that you have, not excellence, just some value. You may have that internal value. It's disturbing your personal state. But the moment you can use discernment to understand, you know what? It's too high. I did the best I can. Next time I can do better. And you can bring it back and you're able to gain your sleep at night. You're able to do things throughout the day without that being in the back of your mind. If only I'd have done that. So that's the excellence barometer. And it is the largest tool in the active personal engagement toolkit we have because it enables you to gut check and be aligned. And then you bring it down with discernment. Look, are these realistic? Because a lot of times we have things in our mind that we think are realistic, and it takes someone on the outside. That's not really realistic. There's nothing wrong with having high goals. There's nothing wrong with shooting for the moon. But you have to make sure that you're doing it in a healthy manner. That is the excellence barometer.
Love it. A couple thoughts come to mind. Like if I were one to strive for excellence and it was causing, and I have this epiphany that you just taught me, oh my gosh, that isn't healthy. A different way to look at what you're saying is like, all right, did I reach my potential today? Yes, I worked to my potential. And did I give it my best effort? Yes. Oh no, I was on social media scrolling for 6 hours. Well, your engaged values was actually social media and scrolling, and it wasn't excellence. But if you have that internal discussion in regard to being excellent, being your best, all right, excellence is what I really believe in. All right, did you spend a lot of time on social media today? Yeah. Well, then let's sort of rethink excellence and say, let's a different gauge, if you will. Did you reach your potential, work to your potential, and did you give it your best effort? Well, if you're on social media for 6 hours, probably not. And there's another action step people can take in regard to reaching their potential. So I agree with Ty 100% in regard to excellence is always that it's always out there. We could get better every day, and we could still be better tomorrow. His basketball analogy. Michael Jordan reached the pinnacle of NBA basketball, but in today's NBA, we know more about health, fitness, basketball, the mechanics of a body. Human beings have grown collectively. Our accelerated growth and strength has really occurred a lot in the last 30, 40 years because of nutrition and health. So if we put him in today's NBA, he would have a new bar. I'm here. I need to do all these things to get here now because I now know what it takes to get there. So he wasn't wrong when he was peaking in the 90s, but we put him in today's society, he'd have more work to do in order to peak. So keep that in mind, that excellence is a fleeting concept, and other than math, when you get the exact right answer, great, excellent. There aren't a whole lot of black and white answers out there.
No,
Maybe when
and
you're diffusing a bomb, which wire to cut? You cut the correct one, and it's every show I watch, it's a different color. I don't know whatever. But if you correct, that's a black and white, and hey, you reached excellence. But the day you don't, you'll know. It'll give you a lasting memory, I would assume.
yeah, let me add on to that because you had something. Excellence is not like it's not like any other core value because it's not. There's not another word that's a core value that is unattainable. All the other core values, I challenge if you're disagreeing with me that excellence is not a core value, I challenge you to find a core value that you can't attain, and that's called a core value. Now you can have a certificate of excellence. In fact, our friend Mike just got one for the school district. A certificate of excellence is different than excellence as a core value because it was given by someone who has a set of standards, and that set of standards means they are excellent this year. They met these items, and they're in that snapshot, in that freeze frame, they're excellent. It's not a core value. That's a status, a moment in time. Core values are ever living and ever existing, okay, until they're not a core value to you anymore and you have no use for it. So the next time you think you're having your excellence is a core value, you're writing it down, just think, can you obtain it? Change your value.
Well, that's a good summary. You're going to shut up. I don't have anything to top that or to add to it. Perfectly stated. So the excellence barometer, if you live by excellence, and I've seen it in my career as well, that people who strive for excellence daily are always left wanting and always stressed about not attaining it. So Ty makes a good point. Remove that as a core value, or the concept of it as a core value, and look at your effort, look at your potential. And referring back to Mike getting that award, his ability, his work ethic, and his dogged determination allowed him to get a rating, a snapshot in time of excellence. Excellence was a rating given to all his other core values that they came to a pinnacle. It wasn't it wasn't his core value of excellence. It was, I'm going to do these things that's going to get me to reach that lofty platform.
Right.
Well said. All right. Well, hopefully you learned something today, and I sure did. The excellence barometer, I hadn't really had it described to me in the terms that Ty did today in regard to how it can be detrimental. I've seen it, but I hadn't really consciously thought about it. So if you're striving for excellence, great, but look at the things that are going to get you to that one-time snapshot in time rating. It's your work ethic. It's your ability. If you don't have the ability, fix that. We talked about it last time. How do you grow as a leader? If you don't have the ability to lead the organization to where they need to be, work on your leadership skills. So your organization could rise to that level of excellence. It's not you being excellent. So I like the nuance there, and Ty's right. And if you strive for excellence all the time, great, but it could be detrimental to your emotional and physical health. So just a caution there. All right. So today we learned about the Leadership Excellence Barometer. And if you like this and you want to check out our other additional information, go jump on our YouTube page, the Enhanced Leadership Project. You can find it obviously on YouTube. If you'd like to work with either of us, feel free to reach out to us directly on LinkedIn or email us at the emails at the bottom of the screen. And we would love to hear from you and love to be able to help you. So until next time, a couple of guys talking about leadership, and the great news is you can do it.
Take care, everyone.